our discussion topic. This was kind of presented to me on Facebook by a listener of ours. He was like, said, maybe you guys could come up with the 20 most influential consoles of all time. And I'm like, I don't know if I really want to put a list together, but I thought we could talk about consoles that we feel are the most influential consoles in gaming history. So, I guess to start off, I really feel like you gotta go way back and go with, like, the Atari. Because there were other consoles that did home gaming before that, but that was the only one that actually made the market happen.
Yeah. The Odyssey proved that there was people were interested in it. That came out in, 72?
Yeah.
And then
Pong wasn't even fucking existent.
And then Pong was, 74, but it wasn't until the Atari VCS came out in 77 that it actually got into the home.
I don't know anything about these old-ass consoles.
You gonna sit there talking to me like that with your flat brim hat? I know about these grandpa machines.
Yeah, so the 2600...
consoles.
I mean, the 2600, they were making games for that up until, 1988, 89.
Yeah.
I was 2.
So, I mean, other than...
We're gonna find out the different ages Jason was.
Yeah. I mean, there aren't many consoles that can say that they had, continuing lifespan like that.
PS2.
I mean, yeah, well, the PS2 did have a long lifespan. It did. Because I think...
It was like up until the midway through the PS3 that it died.
And I like ended on like a soccer game, probably like Winning 11 or something. Like,
yeah,
that's probably the last title.
But yeah,
I think if you're around the same era, because when the Atari 2600 was really starting to get going, because it wasn't super popular.
No, it wasn't like off the gate. No.
It really didn't start getting going until like around 1980. That's when you had other companies jumping in. You had Mattel jumping in with the Intellivision. You had the Connecticut
Coleco.
Leather Company jumping in with Coleco.
Yeah.
The ColecoVision.
It was a weird fucking time.
And then you had the Odyssey too. And really out of those, the ColecoVision was probably the one that had the best home arcade ports. So
yeah, it was the stronger one, but not that many people bought them.
Yeah. Plus, it was one of the first systems that actually would allow you to play another system's games on their console by hooking up a module to it that would allow you to play Atari games.
Hey, you know how you got that other console? Fuck them. Play theirs.
It was the Wild West, man.
Could you imagine that nowadays?
Yeah.
If Nintendo was just like, you got that there Gears of War? Fuck it. Put the disc in. It'll work.
We open sourced it for every console.
Yeah.
Microsoft were like, what? We wanted to work with you, and you're just stealing our games?
They're like, well, you are. You just didn't know it.
So at that time, you had, voices and certain types of music weren't really prevalent in games. Most of them were just beeps and bloops.
B-17
So you had the IntelliVoice module, and then the Odyssey 2 also had a sound module that you could hook onto it. But really, even with that, the ColecoVision was still the vastly superior one out of those three.
And I kind of feel like that was the first time you started seeing, gimmicks popping up on consoles, is when they started doing that kind of shit. Because, 2600 was just here it is. It's a slab of wood, and it plays games.
There are so many different, versions of the Atari VCS.
Well, yeah, because that was, back when it was, department stores had their own versions of stuff.
Sears.
And,
What is this like?
Sears license.
No, they did. It was the Wild fucking West. It was Sears had some. I think JCPenney had their own kind, and then there was
fucking Nintendo's releasing fucking amiibos. It's just Target has this amiibo. You can't get anywhere else.
Well, they did do that.
Yeah.
At first, Dr. Mario was only available at Target.
Yeah. And then toward the
a couple others.
end of the 2600's life, they had the Vader consoles. Because those were the last-ditch effort to try and keep it hip.
And then they did the 2600 Junior.
Yeah, which I'd never seen one.
I have one. It's a small. It looks like a tiny.
It must be, because I've never seen it.
It looks like a tiny 7800, just even smaller.
Oh, maybe I thought it was a plug and play.
You may have, yeah. It's not big. That's what she said. But
it's not big. I'm not gonna lie.
But I think that as for right now, I think as we're going through the history, I think you got Atari and you got ColecoVision. And those are really the only two really influential systems before
Intellivision was shit.
Before the NES came along.
And then you had the Intellivision too, and I was just like, hey, it's the same thing, except it's white instead of brown and gold now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay, so yeah, then I think obviously you'd have to go with the NES next, because it's the only if it wasn't able to rise out of the ashes of the game fucking market crash, we probably wouldn't have gaming like we do today. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still think there would be video gaming at some respect, but I don't think it would be I don't know if we'd be doing it the way we're doing it now, where it's like, you know, you buy a peripheral to put a peripheral into the peripheral and play it. You know, I don't know. That'd be interesting to talk about some days, like what we think it would be like. Well, if it didn't happen until later. At
the time that the NES came along, you had cartridges, then you had companies experimenting with using cassette tapes.
And discs. Or no, not cards. Yeah.
And like the cue cards and the mark cards from Sega and Hudson. And then you had some, even Commodore 64, which I'm going to say is a console. Because some people go, it's just a computer. But I really think that it was mostly known for its gaming. And so...
A giant anthropomorphic bear told you that. That's not a computer. It's more like a computer.
Yeah, you can do word processing on it.
You big dummy.
You do your taxes. But I feel like the Commodore should be considered a console when it comes down to it. Especially in Europe, because in Europe it was huge. Well, it was bigger than the NES in Europe.
Europe was mostly PC gaming before, like, I would say the Master System kind of came around. Because Nintendo didn't, for some fucking reason, Nintendo didn't really try and get into the European market. Mm-hmm. And that's where Sega shined, because they're like, well, if you ain't going to go there...
You saw what happened last time Nintendo tried to partner up with the Europeans? Didn't go so well.
Was that whole tea thing? That tea-tax tea party thing?
Yep.
I know my history.
It was the time that Shigeru Miyamoto threw all that tea in the Boston Harbor. That was...
He just came out of the Boston Harbor. No tea for you. He throws it. Hey, you bitch.
I need this live-action movie of Miyamoto going through history and making everything happen the way it has. He wakes up George Washington. You need to fight the British. I don't wanna. Who the fuck are you?
He wakes up George Washington. You know, your mom really wants that cherry tree to come down. Here, take this. It's dangerous to go alone.
Thank you, Mr. Orient Man.
Mr. Orient Man.
Thank you, Mr. Slant-Eyed Man. You don't know racist yet. I let it pass.
God damn it.
So anyway, back to consoles. Yeah, I'd say Nintendo probably next. That's a no-brainer.
Nintendo proved that the home console was not dead, and that people would just eat it up.
They proved it was not dead through lies and backdoor ways of selling
and monopolizing.
Yeah.
And strong-arming competition.
It's an entertainment system.
And withholding materials to produce items. And
yeah, because fuck you, Nintendo.
Yeah, when you really look back on it, they were pretty shitty to the competition, but that's how they were successful. So
yeah,
it was the 80s, things were different.
And
yeah, everyone's doing coke.
Yeah, that's true.
Mario had a fucking nose full of every fucking time you loaded the game up.
If we were to move on from there, I would have to put these two, like, side by side, and it's the Genesis and the Super Nintendo. Because even though the Super Nintendo eventually did wall up the shit out of the Genesis, it took it a long time to do that. And the Genesis was that thing where, like, people knew that we're not just here forever. Mm-hmm. That was like one of those first times where, like, you were like, oh shit, it can get better. You can get better music, you can get better graphics, like, all this stuff can happen. And then because of Sega and Super Nintendo, you had your first console wars.
Yeah.
That were, like, big. Because, I mean, like you said, you had the Coleco and all that back then, but most people were just like...
Back in the Wild West
what
of
blouse
gaming,
am I going to wear today?
It didn't fucking matter about an idea of a console war. It was basically, who's got the fucking better gun?
Yeah, pretty much.
is going to shoot first and fucking I won the console war.
Yeah.
Because it was just between the two of us on this fucking dusty back road.
But can I play Pac-Man on it? That was kind of the.
Will it play Pac-Man?
Will it play Pac-Man? Well,
Waka,
kind
waka,
of.
waka.
I mean, it looks shitty, but it's Pac-Man.
Pac-Man fever.
I
don't think I
feel
can
like
hire you.
I
You're
feel
Dixon's in the back.
I feel like one console that during the same time period
You go
that
with the TurboGrafx
was
16.
sneaking in there was the TurboGrafx, and the reason
It just didn't have
It-
third-party support,
it
though.
didn't, but it was the first home console to use CD technology when it brought out the CD add-on.
Yeah, which made Sony go, hey.
I mean, it beat
I think I would
it beat
consider
Sega
that
CD by a
Nintendo.
couple years.
Nintendo was like, fuck you, we're sticking with carts.
Well, I'm going to say, now we're getting into an area where it's not so obvious as to, like, who you're going to pick, because it starts spreading out. Because at this time, Sega started making a lot of really dumb decisions, because the Saturn, not that great of a console.
Unfortunately.
I love my Saturn, but it isn't that
Once again,
great.
another system that's much better overseas. Like,
Again,
the
yeah.
Japanese Saturn
It's
library
fantastic.
is amazing.
Yeah.
And they're affordable if you can get a Saturn that'll play them.
And they look nicer, too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why they went the way they did.
Yeah, as far as the next console that would be like innovative at that point, I kind of want to lean to this N64 because no other console had just built-in 4-player and, like you said, the ability to upgrade because they added the expansion packs and all that. But the Sony PlayStation was an amazing innovation in gaming
See,
at that point.
I'm probably going to pick, even though I had a 64 at the time, I would probably say the PlayStation is the next step in making like influential consoles over the 64.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I was leaning towards it, but I definitely would have to go with the PlayStation because PlayStation played fucking CDs.
And that was a big thing.
That in and itself was just insane. That you could just put a CD in and you play it through your fucking TV.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that got Nintendo thinking about it was the Sega CD. Because they're like, oh, well, here's this. But Sega didn't know what the fuck to do with it. It was like, hey, let's just put compressed shitty video
No, see,
on.
Yeah.
when
Like-
the Super Nintendo was out, Sony was working pretty closely with Nintendo, and they were talking to them for a while.
Yeah.
about,
And Philips.
We should do a CD console. Now, could you imagine had Sony stuck with Nintendo, like they didn't split, and Sony
it would've
helped
been-
make Nintendo make a fucking CD console?
It would have been
They
nuts.
would have been so far ahead of everybody, it would have been insane. But that competition led Nintendo to do more innovative things later in
Nintendo's
life.
greed.
At that time, yeah.
Yeah. They were very greedy at that time.
I mean, they had to be.
Which I think is one thing that
They had to get that foundation built.
it shot them right off the bat because they didn't know how to create the CD technology, so they still had to stick with cartridges for the 64. Had the 64 had a disk drive, that thing probably would have been the fucking tits.
Which they developed, but it was too late.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because by that time they're like, well, we're already going to put out this fucking
the
next
ship had
console.
sailed. Honestly, you kind of question whether that was Nintendo not having the technology or just saying like, well,
No,
this is what we're gonna do, and this is
I
gonna set us
guarantee you,
apart.
They were just like, no, we're sticking with cartridges. We have games that people want to play. We don't need to change anything right now. But then they saw that Sony was getting very fucking popular with the games they had, the capabilities that the PlayStation itself had, even with the multiple discs from certain games. Because I mean, I played the fuck out of a lot of those Final Fantasy games. Metal Gear Solid was a multi-disc game. Legend of Dragoon was a multi-disc game.
For some reason, it was cool to me to buy the double disc.
Those things are so fucking huge.
Yeah. I was like, man, it's a more than one disc game. It's gonna come in those awesome cases. And then like after you start collecting for a while, you're like, I hate these.
It's
fucking
too much
things. They
fucking
take up so
space,
much room.
right?
Yeah. Well, and then you also had all the third-party developers that were just like, that's easier to program.
Yeah.
On the PlayStation.
Yeah.
So that's when you had Square leave. That's when you had Konami leave. That's when you had all those third parties go over to Sony.
Yeah.
And
I remember that the first time a Final Fantasy game wasn't on a Nintendo console. Sony. That was it's Final Fantasy VII. Yeah.
Yeah, 7 was the first one on the PlayStation. Still not as good as 6.
I mean, at the
Or
same
4.
time,
Or 5.
you know, I have to mention that
Or
they
3.
existed. You had the 3DO, you had the Philips CDI, and you had the Jaguar
your technical quote-unquote super consoles at
and
the
the
time.
problem was with them is they were all too fucking expensive, or they weren't fulfilling on what they were promising.
They were too expensive and they were too difficult to program for.
Yeah.
Because the 64, you had to work around its two 32-bit processing chips when everybody else was just having one. Or if they had to, they worked in conjunction with each other. The Jaguars worked separately of each other. Mm-hmm. Like, one was used for video and one was used for computing power. And it was just like, how the fuck do you program for that? Other than just making a 16-bit game and splitting it up between the two things.
Yeah.
So that's... And the 3DO was just more powerful than what technology was ready for at that time.
Like, yeah, that's the siren... The swan song of the Dreamcast.
Yeah, that was.
It had a lot going for it, but no one gave a shit because it's too much.
It actually paved the way for so many things, but it was too much
fucking
too soon.
VMU itself was insane.
Yeah,
VMU
Holy shit,
online
man.
play.
For fucking PSO, yeah.
I mean, that I was actually going to say next. I feel like the Dreamcast was an influential console. It failed miserably, but. It was the first one that had online play.
Had a lot of people thinking, like, this is what we need to do.
This is what's next. I mean, the controller is fucking horrible.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking horrible.
It was like a weird melon.
Yeah, it was like a melon with 2 wedges of cheese on the side of it. And I didn't... The fucking analog stick on that was weird, too.
Yeah,
it was very floaty, and it didn't have a good texture.
It's been a while since I've used it. Last time I played it was way back in the early 2000s. I think it was... Capcom 2 and Time Stalkers.
We need to do some Dreamcast games for the channel sometime. That's one console we have never fired up to play.
No.
Although you might need to bring yours, because mine's having this problem where it constantly wants to reset itself. I think it's trying to kill itself.
Well, the lasers get bad at them eventually, and you gotta clean them, and they're kind of hard to maintain. But
I don't clean.
Yeah. I don't clean. In fact, I prefer it to be as dusty as possible.
I ain't touching that thing. It's supposed to take care of itself. It's a future console.
So now, from there...
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2.
PlayStation 2.
Microsoft comes in with the Xbox.
I hated that.
And then the GameCube. And honestly, all three of them did little things that set them apart.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Xbox was the one that came up with the first functioning online multiplayer, like
plus built-in hard drive,
marketplace and everything, and built-in
hard drive was an astonishingly smart thing to do. Mm-hmm. But at the time, everybody else was like, "Hey, this is fucking 6,000 memory cards, so you can play the 2 games." By the way, I fucking hated that about the GameCube. But early on, the memory cards could hold like literally 2 games.
I don't know why they fucking did that.
God fucking help you if you got PSO, because that could hold. That one memory card just held just PSO.
Yeah.
And you're
I have no idea why Nintendo fucking did that. And then you had to wait for like Mad Cats to build like the here's the card that will hold like 130 fucking saves because
so you
Nintendo's
can play
retarded.
The other 20 games that you own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the problem with the Mad Cats ones was Mad Cats products always fucked up within like a month or 2.
Yeah. See, like I liked the GameCube, but I don't really find it to be a console that really changed anything.
Console-wise, no, but that controller is still my
The funny thing was, that was like their early start for wanting to try and make a console that you could take somewhere with you easily.
Oh,
because they made it small, and they put a handle on it, and it was
the GameCube was extremely easy to transport. Have you ever, as a younger person, try to fucking move the original Xbox? Fuck that.
Why would you want to? It's probably a load-bearing fucking console.
Because if you had to go to do a fucking LAN party or whatever, you had to take your fucking gigantic Xbox, which weighed probably like 60 pounds, to your friend's house.
I just bought one for each friend's house and just left it there. I'm like, here, when we're done playing with this, just kind of prop it against the wall.
It's mine. Yeah. Don't touch it afterwards.
That's a load-bearing.
As far as the PS2 goes, that had so many...
PS2's cup runneth over for many a year.
It was the god system at the time. Everyone had it. It could play DVDs, CDs, video games. Had fucking endless potential.
And that's what made that one influential, is because you didn't need to get any extra peripheral to play DVDs on it. You just put it in and it played it.
I mean, there was remotes you could get, plus backwards compatibility.
Yeah, too.
Something we hadn't really seen since Atari. And honest to God, people would go out and buy a PS2, and we're still buying PS1 games to play on their PS2.
Yeah. Now, after that, though,
You can't say that the Wii wasn't influential.
Yeah.
Everyone did motion controls.
Yeah.
You can hate it all you want.
We changed it
Yeah,
a lot.
right.
People were still like, holy shit, Nintendo has controls that you can just fucking wave your arms around like a madman?
Sega did too. It was called the Activator. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're talking about that like ring you the stand in?
Yeah, and it didn't work. Ever.
Right after that, what happened? PlayStation Move. Fucking Connect. Everybody was like, here's
Yeah,
this.
it was influential for a bad reason.
Doesn't matter.
That whole the Connect Move, that shit was garbage.
Doesn't matter if you were still doing it.
Yeah, fuck it. Fuck you, Nintendo.
They had great
Yeah, okay,
ideas.
the Wii. Now after that, the Switch. That's about all I can really.
After that, you had to go through the fucking bullshit like half systems they kept fucking making.
Like the Ouya.
No.
Very
there was-
influential
There was
concept.
the
sucker
Not
D.
to do.
there was the 360, 360 Elite, 360 Elite Slim, the PS3 Slim, PS3.
Yeah, I guess you
without
could say
the fucking-
the 360, and that was like the first time where they split consoles into different money tiers
It
of
was
like
so
what
rough.
you would get.
I hate it. I hate that so fucking
Yeah,
much.
it's so
Just
stupid.
make the
Arcade.
good system.
Arcade Pro and Elite. Was
Yeah.
that how it went? Yeah.
Arcade, you got no hard drive. Have
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
That's why they called it arcade. Keep putting your money in.
They're like, well, how are we going to get people to spend $500 in the Elite? Well, we'll make it black, and we'll lie to them and say that it won't red ring like the other ones.
Yeah.
No,
We did something different
What
with
was
this
even
one.
worse about it though is that you can get an Elite, but then you can get an Elite with either 64, 120, or 250 gigs.
Yeah, they did that bullshit. Yes.
Yeah.
Fuck you even more. Just put it at 250.
And then they did the same thing when they made the Slims after that.
Yeah.
They had different gigabytes of Slim.
PlayStation did similar, but they didn't go that damn hard. I mean, the original PlayStation 3 was hella expensive.
Well, yeah, because they asked for too much off the bat. To
Well,
begin
yeah,
with.
because it had a Blu-ray player, which at the time was
yeah.
crazy fucking expensive.
They're like, well, you can
You
either
could
buy
play
your first
PlayStation
car.
2 games, PlayStation 1 games.
It's like for kids at that time, it's like you could buy your first car or a PlayStation 3.
Dude, if you had that original PlayStation that even first came out, you were the shit, man. You had everything except for a
Yeah.
good TV because there was no good TVs back
Yeah,
then.
there weren't. I think if I remember at that time, the TVs that would run that you could plug stuff into that were huge were like the projection screens.
Yup.
And the video game consoles ruined them.
Yep, burned right into it.
Yeah, I think if from there, if you kind of go back and look at the handhelds too,
Well, yeah, I
because
mean,
we kind of skipped past them because you had the Game Boy.
Game Boy was very influential.
obviously.
Game Boy fucking launched the goddamn nation into holy shit, I can take this anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at that time, it was either that or you had the Tiger electronic things.
Game and Watch.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit about the fucking Game Watch.
Yeah, but that's what you had. That's all you had.
Yeah.
Or the actual like wristwatches that you could
Oh, God.
play shitty games on.
Can't wait.
Gotta play games.
I mean, you gotta give some credit to the Game Gear for trying to do color,
Yeah.
but
You don't need to give it to the Lynx, though.
no. I mean, the Turbo Express is really cool when you think about it, but once again, it was way too expensive for a handheld. But you could actually play the same games on your Turbo Graphics as you could,
Yeah.
on the Turbo Express. Plus, they had the TV tuner, so you'd have a portable TV.
If we wanted to fucking do the
Game
whole
Gear had that
portal
too.
thing, we had to go to like it'd be Game Boy Color, SP.
Well, I think
because
SP is
is way more.
blows away.
I was going to
color
say,
and-
I think
No, but SP came out way much
In advance.
much later. The
I
color
think-
was just
I think SP is probably one of the most influential ones for portable gaming because
backlit.
if you look at
lithium
it,
battery.
first backlit, first good battery that was a lithium battery,
It-
shoulder buttons and everything worked well. And if you think
Folded.
about it, it's the design they went with for the rest of their fucking.
Well, the
I'd go
clamshell
get my,
design.
my, my
clamshell.
3DS, but it's out there.
I mean, I got my there, yeah,
Your DS from the old days. This thing feels like a kid's toy.
yeah. That's ancient now. Yeah.
Honestly, holding this, I feel like I just got it from McDonald's.
Give me that fucking. No, it doesn't.
Your grandpa's DS.
I bet it still fucking turns on.
Of course, it turns on. Nintendo
Yes, the
products,
battery is fucking amazing.
Nintendo products do not fucking die, dude.
Yeah.
Did I tell you about that? How there was a soldier who had his Game Boy Color and not Game. It was Game Boy something and
Pocket.
like Nom or whatever, and he got
I think he had a
it got
Nom.
bombed. Right? Legit, it got bombed.
It's still fucking.
And
works.
it's still fucking red. It's in a
Yeah.
museum in New York.
Yeah, it is.
Dude.
That's crazy.
They have it hooked up so it never dies.
So I guess if I was to cap it all off, Yeah, for like handhelds, I think SP is one of the most influential, and then probably followed by like the idea of the DS. I don't think the 3DS is influential just because it just played on a gimmick.
Of course,
People were into 3D at a time, and then they're just like, my eyes hurt.
On a 3D console, you don't play 3D.
The newer one, it doesn't have that much problem with your eye strain, but it's still you're not going to use it.
No, and I think the 2DS was the worst idea they ever came up with.
And I like the PSP, but it wasn't successful commercially.
I think
No,
again,
it's
the
not.
PSP
It had a lot of good ideas.
Yeah.
PSP was one of those things that was ahead of its time, and they came up with a really. It was a thing that they basically gave you everything you ever wanted in a handheld device, but they didn't give you anything good to do with it.
There was good games.
You know, they're like,
No one
here's
gave a shit because
widescreen,
it was way
it's
too
high
fucking much money.
definition. You know, all it's like.
Not to mention, have you held a PSP?
Yeah.
It's awkward as shit the way the joysticks are. Mm-hmm. And when I was playing Dissidia...
And it's not easy to keep in a pocket either.
No. When I was playing Dissidia on it, that second joystick is just... It's so uncomfortable to
bullshit.
fucking use. Yeah.
So, I think if I was to say final console that I think is influential, it's got to be the Switch.
Oh, of course.
Because everything that's out right now is just doing the same thing everything's been doing generations before.
Yeah.
So.
The Xbox is just the Xbox, PlayStation is this PlayStation. The Switch is going to have you be like, sure wish I could play my PlayStation right now, but I'm in the middle of the airport.
Which makes me wonder what the next PlayStation and Xbox console are going to be.
Same things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think they might try to do a hybrid.
I feel like they might try again on portable systems.
Yeah.
Because
PlayStation kind of tried that with the Vita, because they were trying to have it where you could kind of cross over between the systems, and it just never got there.
It didn't take off because no one wanted a fucking game system that was just like nothing.
Yeah.
It's better than the fucking Vita Go or the PlayStation Go or whatever, because that was even worse.
PSP Go, yeah.
Oh my god, that fucking thing.
No games can be put in it. You have to download it all, and it has enough space for 2 games, something like that. It's bullshit.
Yay!
I know one person that owned one.
Yeah, I did too.
It's the same guy.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Well, I guess that will cap that off. If there's anything you guys felt like we missed, please hit us up on Facebook and let us know what you think should also be included in that list. So, I think that'll do it. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for listening. Hit up Ripped Apparel with that code Grindcast in all caps at checkout. That's the best place to
Just
do it.
smash your keyboard. Get all the fucking t-shirts.
And we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Take
Bye.
care.